library.
Let's go to the 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 library, a Niagara Falls Public Library podcast. Hello and welcome to the podcast. This is episode 4, and we are back to a focus on mental health. Our guest for this month is Niagara-based author, peer support worker, and mental health advocate Darcy Patrick. He is the author of 5 books, the most recent of which is Managing Wellness, which we'll be discussing today. And he is an advocate and speaker on mental health and wellness issues in Niagara. Here is the conversation I recently had with Darcy on his mental health story, his body of work, and his new book, Managing Wellness. Well, Darcy, thank you so much for joining us today. For those who might not be familiar with your work, can you tell us a little bit about your story and about your journey as a writer and a mental health advocate?
Yeah. So in 2013, I made the call for help. I'd struggled with depression for over 38 years of my life. So that was a big step for me to actually acknowledge my depression and anxiety and to make that call for help. Shortly after I started therapy, I realized that my way of expressing myself was through written word. So every week I was kind of handing in homework to my therapist in different forms, and we would read through it together, and she's, changing my way of thinking and viewing the world. And so one day she said to me, just out of the blue, she says, Darcy, you're like a natural writer. You should write a book, right? And I laughed. Like there was absolutely no way that I was capable of doing anything like that. I had zero self-esteem. I always had horrible grades in school. This was something that was just out of my wheelhouse. But she said to me, if I wrote a book, I could probably reach a lot of people who struggle with depression and mental health issues, because I wasn't a doctor. I wasn't a therapist. I was just, a normal guy. So in 2016, I released my first book, Why I Run, my story of how I won my life back from the darkness of depression. And when this book came out, I honestly thought I was going to sell maybe, 40 to 60 books to friends and family out of pity. But in the first year, I sold close to, I'm going to say probably close to 3,000 books just out of my hand. And the cool thing about it was that people started to come into the music store that I once worked at every day, sometimes 3 people a day, to talk to me about their mental health struggles. They felt comfortable with me because I was just a normal guy, right? I started to do public speaking engagements, telling my story, letting people know that they weren't alone. Because of doing those public speaking engagements, I wanted to help more. I started to, hear other people's stories, and I really, really felt that I could help them on a higher level. So I wrote my second book, which was Creative Writing for the Mind, Body, and Soul. And shortly after that came out, I was asked to turn it into a 4-week course for the Family Mental Health Support Network here in Niagara, and I was a musician, and I never turned down a gig. So I said yes right away without even thinking, without knowing what I was doing. And I, turned it into this 4-week course that just took off. I started teaching it for different libraries, the Niagara Falls Public Library, St. Catharines Public Library, Welland Public Library, for different mental health and addiction organizations. I'd say that right now, I've probably taught over 1,000 people creative writing for the mind, body, and soul. I then came out with my third book, which was My Guided Meditation, using meditation as a therapeutic tool to focus your overactive mind. I turned that into a course and started teaching it immediately as well. When COVID-19 came, I saw it as a growth opportunity for myself. I was off work. I was sitting at home doing nothing. All my courses evaporated in front of me. And so I decided I was going to turn, that time into a gift. and I wrote my fourth book, The Big Let Go, Letting Go of Control is Taking Control. And after that was released, I turned it into a 4-week course, and again, started teaching it immediately for all the same, community partners that I had taught for with the other books. So really, my future just kind of unfolded in front of me, and I started to think again, what else can I do? So I took a peer support worker course through the Hamilton Mental Health Rights Coalition, and I scored a job at St. Joe's in Hamilton as a peer support worker, and my life completely changed. Working with people one-on-one in mental health was like an amazing thing. And in the last 9 months, I actually just finished writing my 5th book, Managing Wellness, Creating and Maintaining a Mind, Body, and Soul Connection. So since 2013, when I made that call for help, it put in motion a life that I never dreamed I was ever going to live. Like if you came up to me, 6-7 years ago and said to me, Darcy, you're going to write a book, I would have laughed. And if you would have told me I was going to be a public speaker, actually talking about my mental health issues openly in public, man, I would have just walked away from you and hid. But now it's become my passion and my purpose to help as many people as I possibly can. And each book that I've written, each thing that I do is solely based on my personal experience, because I feel that that's the only way that we can actually reach people in mental health, is to share our own experiences and let people know that they're not alone.
Right. It's such an amazing story. I've heard you before because, you've, as you said, you've spoken at the library many times. But I'm really glad you could share that with people who may not have heard it, because it's such a great story and so inspirational from, as you described, where you started from and as to where you are now. And now you've developed this wonderful body of work. You've got 4 books under your belt, and now the 5th one coming out, Managing Wellness. So how does Managing Wellness fit in with your previous 4 books? What new ground does it cover?
Yeah, so, Managing Wellness is a book that I kind of was taken by surprise. I was driving into work one day, and, I kind of promised myself that I was going to take some time off, because I was, writing and publishing a book every year for the past, 4 years. And all of a sudden the title came to my head, and it kind of wrote itself. So Managing Wellness is, it's like book 5 of my recovery. I went from using writing as a therapeutic tool into meditation to learning to use, different tools in the Big Let Go, radical acceptance, forgiveness. But I wanted to really dive deeper into myself, into my self-care and what I had learned. So Managing Wellness is all about, meditation, self-love. It's about building faith in yourself. It's about falling in love with your breath, like the one thing that we all take for granted that we're given as soon as we start living is our breath, right? And we kind of take it for granted. So there's a lot of work and around breath and meditation. The book is really kind of cool because it's all about the things that I used to laugh about that I never thought existed, right? Like a mind, body, and soul connection. That I used to say was like nothing but dirty hippie stuff that never applied to me, right? Mm-hmm. But in to be truthful, I mean, we are 3 parts, right? We have a body, we're moving around. We have a mind, we think every day, and our soul, that inner energy, is there. And when something's off and it's not working right, then we're never really well. We're never really functioning. So this book kind of takes you through my my experience in building that connection again, right? Like the things that I went through, the things that I didn't believe and learned to believe about myself and all 3 parts of me.
Right. And how did that come to be? How did that that awareness kind of develop? over time? Because I mean, you started with therapy, I believe you've said in the past, and then but that's kind of more science-based, CBT, et cetera. How does that turn into this whole spiritual concept of wellness, of the whole person that you're talking about?
Yeah, it was pretty neat because I started to really notice all the different reactions that I would have in different situations. In my creative writing course, this really kind of spurred me on to really delve deeper into it, because I would always ask the class, how do we react when we're put in a negative situation, in our minds, in our bodies, right? And I give the class about 2 minutes to write down things, and then we'd all share. And that list is huge, and people can come up with like probably 55 to 60 ways that they feel negative emotion in themselves, in their mind, in their body, right, in their soul. Mm-hmm. And then when I ask them to do it in a positive light, I mean, the class is lucky to break 10, right? So I really started to think, like, how come I'm missing so much in my life? How come I'm placing so much value on negative things, feeling it fully in who I am, right? Like how my body's reacting, how my mind goes certain ways, how I allow my self-esteem to like plummet in negative situations. But then when positive things happen, I just kind of ignore it. And even negative self-talk in that situation, where it's like we think we don't deserve good experiences. That yeah, but moment, I like to call it, where it's like you're feeling good, but you should be ashamed. So that kind of spurred me on to really, when I was experiencing positive experiences in my life, I started to really, number one, I would take note of it. I would start journaling and writing down like how good I felt when a positive experience was happening, like how there was a warmth in my chest, right? Mm-hmm. How my mind felt light. And I started to think, well, how can I duplicate these feelings? Like what steps do I take, right? So I delved deeper into meditation. I delved deeper into breath work. At the beginning of Managing Wellness, I talk about a trip to the grocery store, where after a morning meditation, I felt a state of bliss, which I never felt before. And, I thought to myself, is this the way normal people feel? Mm-hmm. Right? Like, is a normal person who doesn't struggle with depression or anxiety, do they feel this way all the time? Mm-hmm. They don't. Mm-hmm. This is something that has to be built inside you. And a lot of people go through life never reaching that stage, right? They'll die, right? They look for outside influences. They get pulled into addiction. Mm-hmm. Their bodies slowly break down because of the addiction that they're in. And it's all connected, right? And so I started to really take notice in my own life how that connection, if it's weakened in one area, how the other area will slowly fall. But also when it's strengthened in one area, how that connection will grow, right? So when we feel good mentally, we have energy, we have drive to go outside. When we're outside and we're feeling the sun on us and we're breathing fresh air, our bodies react as well, right? So It's like I had to really dig in deep and go, what am I missing?
Mm-hmm. That's great. I mean, so just to have the insight to live kind of more intentionally and bring that awareness to what you're doing and how you're feeling. Would you say that's a lot of what you cover in your courses? Is that? Oh yeah. With that, right.
Yeah, that whole, and in this book, I have a wonderful chapter that's called like following the flow, right? Mm-hmm. Where I give an example of how when we exercise our mind, how it flows into our body and how it flows into our soul. And when we exercise our body, how it flows into our mind and how it flows into our soul.
Right.
And when we do things we love, and we exercise our soul by feeling good, how that flows into the body and how it changes our way of thinking and interacting in the world.
Right. You know, it's I know it's not expressly religious. It almost kind of reminds me of Buddhism. Would you say, is there that kind of influence on your thinking, or did you kind of just come by this on your own system of thought kind of thing?
Yeah, I kind of came through my own system of thought, because I had to make it my own.
Right.
So I'm not one to, like, when I write and when I take on tools, I'm not one to like regurgitate things.
Right.
Because my whole thing is that for me, writing has to come from inside me, and my personal ways of experiencing it. Right. So, I mean, I talk about chakras in the book. And how, feeding them and growing that energy strengthens, your being present in life. But yeah, I would say that it leans very heavily towards, I like to call it just, living a life that's centered around love and kindness.
Right. Right. And that's kind of, I could see how that might appeal to people who might be reluctant to kind of embrace, a spiritual tradition of, that's more established for thousands of years, might have other kind of baggage or whatever attached to it.
Yeah. Because I find that, like, whenever I'm teaching or whenever I'm writing or lecturing or whatever, I try to always leave religion out of it, right? Draw more on the faith. Because as soon as you bring kind of religion in, you start separating people into groups. Yeah, and it becomes very limiting, right? But when we talk about building faith, it's completely different, right? I think people have a hard time distinguishing, a practice of faith with religion, right? Building faith and living a life of kindness and love is completely different than opening a book and taking it verbatim, word for word, right?
Right. As you said, and so, I mean, from what I've seen, based on your work with the library, how many sessions have you done with this? Like at least 3 or 4, I think, over since 2019, with obviously a big gap in there for the first part of COVID.
Yes.
Based on feedback that you've collected, feedback we've collected, and just the reactions we've heard from people who have taken your courses, you do tend to, and we get a lot of repeat registrants, we find when we run your courses. So you really seem to connect with people. You touched on this briefly, but maybe you could talk a bit more about it. What do you think it is about your style, about your message that's so effective in reaching people and and bringing them back? It's part of the personal connection, as you were talking about, your personal story, but maybe you could talk a bit more about that.
Yeah, I think that the reason why people like to come back is because it is so personal, right? Where it's easy for us to go through mental health books to pick out tools and to give advice. Say we say, you have to set a boundary, right? But then we don't actually give instruction on how to set boundaries. That's just one example that of something that I teach. But when I teach it, I bring in my own personal life, right? And my own personal way of doing each thing. And I think that's what resonates with people, because a lot of the times when we, see a therapist, when we see a psychologist, they kind of don't bring in their own personal experiences. They kind of make it sterile. They use language that's hard to understand or is intimidating to people. And it kind of stops them from starting because they're afraid of doing something wrong. So I think that my way of reaching people and my way of teaching is so appealing because, man, I just kind of throw out real life experiences, in the creative writing for the mind, body, and soul. When we talk about building thought records, I give an example of like how my dog went poo on a walk, and the emotions and the feelings that I had based around that. And so something as simple as that can resonate with people, right? Where the situations may be a little bit different, but the emotional reactions, are always the same. So when I write and I teach, I always make it like so personal that everyone can relate to what I'm saying.
Right.
And I think that's what's missing in mental health.
Mm-hmm.
Is it has to be relatable.
For sure.
Otherwise people's eyes, glaze over,
Mm-hmm.
and they lose interest, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like a simple term, like when we talk about, ruminating,
Mm-hmm.
people like look at that and they're like, what's he talking about? Right. But when I talk about cycling thoughts over and over again, all of a sudden they understand it.
Right.
So it's that language, that common language that needs to be in mental health.
Right.
So
And
people aren't intimidated. So people aren't scared to talk, where
Right.
they know that what's happening with me actually is happening with them.
right. And I mean, you're a peer support worker, as you said, with St. Joseph's Health Center. So is that, what exactly is a peer support worker? Is that something similar where you're kind of, it's, as you said, you're not a doctor, you're not a therapist. So you actually it frees you up a bit to not use that professional modality or whatever you want to call it, and just kind of you're the expert in your own experience, and all you're doing is sharing that experience with people, and in a kind of an instructive way, like, this is my experience, this is what I've done, and here's how you can do it. So there's a certain simplicity to that. How does that fit in with your peer support work? And if you could maybe even start by explaining what a peer support worker is. I'm not even 100% sure I understand what that job actually does.
Yeah, so a peer support worker is someone with lived experience,
Mm-hmm.
In mental health addictions. And so we can relate to people and give them a safe place to talk about their problems, the things that they're going through, because we've been through it ourselves. And that barrier that's broken by being at the same level as those people is huge, right? So you build like a trust that wouldn't normally be there between a psychologist or a therapist. And so, we listen, we give ideas for, direction in their recovery. We help them apply tools that they're being taught to use, but in a more productive manner, right? So they may not be able to understand something fully. So a peer support worker can break it down, because I've been through it, in more easier to understand terms, right? Mm-hmm. So what happens with the peer support worker is that we build this bond of trust and friendship, where people will actually be more proactive in listening, because we've been through it. They'll be more proactive in taking instruction, because we've made it through the other side, right? So the power of being a peer support worker is really, it's in that lived experience role. So, I mean, my day consists of, in a peer support worker position, of sometimes just going on a 20-minute walk with someone who's struggling, with mental health and just needs someone to talk to.
Right.
Other times, I'm going over, some ways of breaking down their emotional reactions, so it's more understandable to them. Other times I'm just kind of giving them resources so they can find housing. But the cool thing about it is that we try to empower them to make the changes in their lives, right? So we support them. I don't go out and find them a house. Mm-hmm. I don't go out and find them housing. I don't go out and find them a CBT course that they need to take. I give them the resource where it is, and support them in going after that goal, right? Right. So, I mean, peer support is a pretty broad term, which makes it really free, right? So I'm not a therapist, but I am. Mm-hmm. I'm not a social worker, but I kind of am. Right. It's like this wonderful relationship where it's like, you hang out with someone and you grow with them.
Right.
So it's like the greatest gift that we all have that we tend not to use when it comes to mental health is our ears. And the one thing that is on, when I'm doing referrals for peer support, the number one thing that's always listed when you ask people, what are you hoping to gain from having a peer support worker, is someone to talk to who understands me.
Mm-hmm.
Which is like the biggest thing that I think everyone in the world needs, is that connection where you're free to talk without judgment.
Right. And so am I right in thinking then you're part of kind of like a larger health team, kind of a professional health team, and then you're kind of the I want to say the kind of more human face of that, aspect of that. Because I mean, it's less medical, right? Like you're saying, you're in a hospital setting, so I mean, I'm sure the other care they get would be more medically oriented, whereas you're the kind of the other side to that.
Yeah. So I work for a unit called the I got to get it right. The what's it called? The Patient and Family Collaborative Services, right? So there's like, I think 11 different peer support workers that work in my unit. And we work within the hospital with inpatients, and also people who have progressed out of the hospital as outpatients as well, right? So, I mean, I'm working on unit, like in the hospital, going to people's rooms, talking with them on a weekly basis. And at the same time, I'm, talking to people over the phone, or I'm actually going out into the community when COVID isn't happening and, meeting them at a coffee shop, going for a nice walk in a park. It's a pretty special thing, but yeah, it's a unit within the hospital.
Right. And is that a new thing? Like, does that exist in Niagara, first of all?
Surprisingly, it does not exist in Niagara, which is pretty sad. So this has been going on in like Hamilton. Like, you can literally draw a line on the map as to like where this stops. Because it's like, as soon as you get towards Niagara, there is no peer support. Right. I know they're trying to build it, but it's incredible that it's not here. So when I started looking for a job, it was basically, knew I was going to be either traveling to Hamilton, like Oakville, Mississauga, Toronto, like that whole other side of the lake has progressed so much more than the Niagara region has as it goes to mental health.
Right.
Which is kind of, really sad, because if you look at the stats, I'm not a stats guy, but if you actually like Google like the impact of peer support on mental health, it's staggering. Really? When there's a peer support role involved in someone's recovery, it's amazing what happens. Right. Compared to it not being there.
So it would be an evidence-based practice, I'm assuming, which is why the hospital would probably have it, right? I mean, yeah, right. Yeah. Well, that's fascinating. Thank you for sharing that. I know it's a little off topic of your book, but
no, it's part of it, right?
Yeah, exactly. But I guess, that's part of the question. I guess then, has being a peer support worker made you stronger in this other area as kind of an author, mental health advocate, or has it worked the other way? Has being an author, mental health advocate with that experience made you stronger as a peer support worker, or do they just kind of balance each other? Do they, strengthen each other? Would you say?
It balance. It's a really nice balance that's been created, because part of being a peer support worker is knowing what to share and what not to share. So you get to pick your spots, right? So I get to work one-on-one with people and give them tools from my books. And that is really special, because it's something that I myself can offer that another peer support worker might not be able to offer. Right. And at the same time, another peer support worker may have a lot more different lived experience than me, so they have more to offer to the client as well. So with peer support, it becomes like a really good balancing act, where it's like I learn every day from my peers, and they learn every day from me as well. So it's kind of really, really, become a really cool fine balance between honing my skills for myself in my own self-care by being able to give back to other people at the same time.
Right. Well, that's great. yeah, hopefully we can bring something like that to Niagara at some point. I mean, I know it's just a matter of size and resources. I'm sure for one thing, we're just a little bit smaller and things tend to reach us a little bit later. But that sounds, yeah, like something we could really use down here, I would think. So getting back to your books, I understand last we spoke, you had finished recording some audiobook versions of your books. Are those available now? And where could people find those? So
those are available on Audible, as well as iBooks, I believe. Mm-hmm. You can visit my website, darcypatrick.com, and I have links for them. So there's the Why I Run. My first book is an audiobook. My Guided Meditation is an audiobook. And The Big Let Go is an audiobook now. And I was recorded the first 2 chapters of Managing Wellness.
Nice.
So I'm hoping that within a month or 2, that book will be available as an audiobook as well.
And is Managing Wellness, is that available in print now? I know you were planning to put it out around March.
February 28th, it'll be available on print.
February 28th. And I guess people can visit your website as well to find that one?
Yes. And it's actually it is available on Kindle and Kobo as an ebook right now, but the print version of it will have to wait.
Right. Yeah, it's just a little more preparation, I imagine, to get that all up and running. Okay. Well, and what was that like for you? I guess one follow-up question I had. So what was it like for you, the process of revisiting your old work and recording these audiobooks? Was it fun? Was it tedious? Or because it seems like it would be a lot of work to have to go through everything again and then put it down in audio, edit it, and put it out that way.
It's pretty neat because you kind of forget what you write.
Right. I guess. I mean, because some of these you wrote 5 years ago, right? 6 years ago?
Yeah. So it's kind of eye-opening sometimes when I'm reading through it and realizing that, wow, I wrote that. Mm-hmm. So it kind of, it's really inspiring, and it's a lot of fun to read through it. And it's challenging too, because when you're reading through something, you got to change a bunch of stuff. Because someone's not reading it, you're reading it to them. So it's really challenging. It just adds to that creative, flow that feels good, right? So it's a learning curve to record an audiobook, but at the same time, it's like one of the most enjoyable things. Like, it energizes me to sit down behind the mic and give my books an actual voice. And it's funny because I record them all myself, and ACX or Audible offers people to narrate your books. Sure. And I always thought that's funny. Like, why would I want someone else reading my book? Not that there's anything wrong with anybody out there that's doing voice work. But I couldn't see anybody reading my books other than me, unless I could get James Earl Jones to do it.
Right.
That would just be the coolest thing, to have Darth Vader reading my books.
That's just it. It's like sometimes they have audiobooks narrated by like Sean Penn or some famous Hollywood actor, so that can be interesting sometimes. But I agree. I think the most interesting ones tend to be the ones that are read by the author, because you're hearing it in their own voice. I mean, I'm an audiobook guy because I don't have a lot of time to sit down and read anymore. With 2 young children, and it's been COVID. So I love to have audiobooks on while I'm, just doing mundane kind of household chores. I think it's a great way to read without reading, to be honest with you. So just a pointer to anyone listening, NFPL does offer a wide selection of audiobooks. It's a legitimate way to read. It does count as reading. So please do check those out, and check out Darcy's as well. Darcy, I think that's all the questions I had for you. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a great conversation. And
thank you for having me, and for all the courses that we've run together.
Yeah, and hopefully we can have you.
People and done a lot of good, so that's nice.
I agree, and I hope we can have you back soon. I guess that's one final follow-up question I could ask, and we discussed this a bit before we started recording. Where can people find out where you're presenting again soon? I guess would that be your website? Would that be the best source?
Visit my website occasionally, darcypatrick.com. I usually have all my classes listed like a month ahead of time usually. Right. And they're always free to the public.
Right.
So when they're up there, jump on it and register. Yeah.
For sure. All right. Well, that's great. Darcy, thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Greg, for having me.
Take care. And that's it for the podcast. You can learn more about Darcy Patrick and his books at darcypatrick.com. You can also find them at the Niagara Falls Public Library. Don't forget to also check out the library's new Mental Health and Wellbeing resources page at my.nflibrary.ca/mental health. For now, happy Canadian Mental Health Week, and we'll see you next time.